Well, welcome back, everybody, to this being episode 9 of Boarderline Genius. By way of introduction, my name is Andrew, Australian-based game creator who's created this little guy, Footy Feud, and also this bigger guy here, a Marvel game that is soon to be released to the Australian market, which is pretty cool. But we're not here to talk about that this evening. We're very lucky to have, one, our first international guest on Borderline Genius, but also, secondly, another first, a guest who is more on the supply chain side of designing board games rather than the creator side, which our previous 8 guests have been. So, Hersh, it's fantastic to have you on the show. It's Hersh from
Yeah,
Hero Time Manufacturing. So, yeah,
yeah, it's a
great to have you
pleasure
on.
being here. Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. I'm looking forward to our conversation and deep diving into all the different topics we can cover. Yeah,
Absolutely. So, for those of you tuning in for the first time, our episodes have lasted somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour and 15. Really, it's the intent of this is to provide a really unique insight into how different areas of game design work. So, as I said before, our first 8 episodes are focused on Australian-based creators, and it's fantastic to have a unique lens more on the manufacturing side of things so far. But Hirsch, before we dive into maybe a few specific topics, yeah, to tell our audience a bit more about yourself and how you got into gaming in the first place.
yeah, I would love to. So my name is Hersh. Um, I've been I've been living in China since like 2015, and in 2019, my brother and uncle they created their first game. They called it Zaberius. They've been working on it for like 8 years. It's been in
Yeah,
development for ages.
yeah,
And then we're like, "Oh, can you help us manufacture this game?" And I've dealt with a lot of factories before in different industries, but this time it was a whole new industry for me to handle. I've known board games for a long time. We always used to play them,
yeah,
but this one's a completely different lens. Suddenly, like I need to make them, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so so I went all over China. Um, it was 2000. It was 2018 or so. I went all over China to the different locations of where they manufacture games. So China is divided into the south of China, which is Guangdong area,
yeah,
where they make a lot of the miniatures and like a lot of the plastic stuff. And then it has another area and more or less a central area of China, Zhejiang, that whole area, then the Shanghai, and then they have also the northern areas. So I was just like going all over the place in China, finding different factories. And yeah, so one of the problems that I've had that nobody could give me straight answers or information. Like I came with a sample to the different factories, and I'm like, okay, I
yeah.
want to understand this one. What should we improve? What should we do differently? Is it good? Is it not good? What's the price? And nobody could disclose any information. So I
Mm,
personally felt like I lack control over what's happening with the game. That like I'm going to be here. I have the sample game, but I still cannot control the outcome at all.
yeah,
So I felt like there's a lot in this industry that can improve,
hmm,
and I love management, I love operations, I love systems, and I was like, okay, let's conquer this beast and let's make it happen. And since then, I started with my brothers and I started with a few other friends, and I really got the grip on things and I started to understand deeply how to manufacture, what are the things you want to look out for, uh, step sorry, step in the processes that we can improve all the time, and yeah, so 4 years later, Hero Time grew quite a bit. I've done maybe over 100 different games.
yeah, wow,
Quite a few over games. Yeah, I think
yeah.
in total around 1 million, over 1 million different copies of games. So yeah, I feel very proud of from where I came and what I've accomplished, and I feel very glad that I could actually help in this industry standardize more, improve more, and so forth. Yeah,
That's
that's it
absolutely
basically.
incredible. Well, to basically tick over 1 million units produced in the first 4 years, 5 years is an incredible feat, right? So that's yeah, to be completely applauded and not taken lightly. So many things there to kind of deep dive. Um, I guess kind of as you said before, you grew up with board games and you've had a background in manufacturing. But was it merely just those two pieces that kind of allowed your family to, I guess, consult yourself to get on a plane to China, or was there kind of anything going back to the genesis of the story? Like, was there anything more that led to that first plane trip over to China to think, let's see if I can make a business
Oh,
out of this?
no, no, no. When I first came to China, it was solely for fun. I came here to travel. I just came from India.
Yeah,
I was a bit beaten up. Um, India is tough. And I was like, okay, I want to have some fun. I want to see some beautiful sceneries. So I took the plane to Beijing, and I was shocked. China was
yeah,
a massive culture shock for me at first, but I really came just to have fun, just to enjoy myself.
yeah,
Um, and slowly, as after I've been here for a year, I wanted a job. I needed to work a little bit, so a lot of friends were. Like I made like suitcases for people. I made clothes. I helped this guy, that guy, just random jobs that I've ran. Um,
yeah,
and I came into China in 2015, so it, the they they didn't even have like Google Maps or Baidu
yeah,
Maps
yeah. True.
here. So it
Yeah,
was for me, it was very hardcore. People could
yeah.
still not travel easily in China. Um,
Mm,
Alibaba was the international Alibaba platform,
yeah,
just came about, just became kind of standard. So yeah, it was China was still in development, and I had a little bit of room to do stuff. But then when the board game thing came in, it really solidified my place here. It gave me like I'm doing something more
mm,
while being here. It's not just a whim that will come and pass. So that really helped me build my life here in China rather
yeah.
than like some other place.
Absolutely. I guess, yeah, and thanks very much for almost like the elevator pitch version of the last 8 years, right? From where you started to where you are at the moment. I think that there's such a similarity there for any creators who are watching or listening in that ultimately we do have a vision, right? Where we all kind of wish that 5 years into our journey that we'll sell 1 million copies as opposed to produce 1 million copies. What I guess kind of like you spoke about the insight before that I guess your core insight was this was really challenging, like it was really difficult to get a straight answer and you're actually then meeting the factories physically. I guess it's one thing to uncover the insight. It's another thing to take a step to then making a career out of this. So walk us through that process. Like what was I guess, the light bulb moment or the thought process that made you think, you know what, like this is going to be my purpose here, as opposed to just recreation and fun that you originally thought you were heading there for?
You asking what was the moment that I realized, okay, this is not
I
just fun
think so.
anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like what because you uncovered that there's an opportunity. But it's one thing to realize there's an opportunity. There's then
Yes,
another
there is.
thought process to commit action to help realize that opportunity yourself. So what was the spark or what was the thought process behind committing action to it as opposed to just uncovering an insight?
So actually, it started with a couple from New Zealand.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there's Craig and Debbie. They made a game called Hactics. A couple from New Zealand, a genius game, um, like about not like managing money and managing
Mhm.
investment because both of them come from the investment industry.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so they created a game where children, even teenagers, play the game and learn about how to invest money in the different. Like they have a fictitious city, and then
Yeah.
you can start buying lands. But it's not like Monopoly where you just like, oh, I'm going to buy a house. No, you literally need to invest money, and then it goes out of your portfolio and generates money. It doesn't generate money, so you really learn a lot. And one of
Yeah.
their
Okay.
mechanics in their game was magnets.
Interesting.
Um, yeah,
Okay.
so they
Yeah.
had to use magnets, and their magnets need to be very powerful, very strong. So they couldn't go to any factory to work on their game. And they spoke to me, and their order wasn't small. It wasn't my biggest, but at the time, I don't know, that order suddenly a couple from New Zealand who's making such a difficult game is, and my price wasn't the cheapest,
Yeah.
but it's a price that I felt like I can deliver the best product possible for their needs.
Mm. Yeah.
Suddenly I see like this couple all the way from New Zealand really trusts me. And it wasn't necessarily like some of my friends or friends that I know. They reached out. I got to know them, and I managed to fulfill their project very successfully.
Yeah.
And that moment it dawned on me that this is actually a business.
Yeah.
This is it's not for fun anymore. It's not let's have a try. It's no, people rely on me. Um, People need this service, and I'm here. I feel like obviously there are many good other options in China. I'm not saying I'm the only option, but I do think that I'm a good option to have, especially with the reliability and transparency of the project. So thanks to them, really. I
Yeah.
I, it, I I don't even want to say it, but I felt very depressed for
How
some
come?
reason when it came and when I finished the project. Suddenly, it was very depressing for me because my mindset changed. So before it was like a lot of fun. Now,
Yeah.
no, this is a serious business that I need to treat very, very like carefully and really make sure that it works perfectly well. So just a mindset was completely changed the way I saw the world, the way I saw myself,
Hmm.
and that was a moment. That was a moment where I said, okay, I need to do everything in my power to make sure every project is as perfect as possible, is as good as possible. And since then, I invested a lot of money. Like I took all the profits that I've done so far and I invested
Yeah.
it in a system. I built
Yeah.
a whole order management system on top of Dynamics and SharePoint just to make sure that it works well in production. So yeah, I think that was definitely one of the moments. And you should go
Yeah.
check their game out, Hactic. I'm not. Yeah, it's a good game. It's a good
Yeah.
game. I really enjoyed making it. But yeah, that was one of those moments. I had a couple more moments, but that's definitely the moment I remember the most.
Yeah. And like you spoke then about not just the, I guess, I'll call it the heartache rather than the depression of finishing off the project and then I guess having to source the next one there afterwards. But then having that sense of reliability, that responsibility, and that dependence on you, and yeah, that responsibility to bring it to life. Again, probably like help me understand as well. So like it took a mindset shift where you've kind of realized, okay, this isn't fun anymore. Like this is intensely rewarding, but others are relying on me to bring this to life. What kind of then other actions did you commit to doing afterwards to make that now the norm and your purpose as opposed to something you were dabbling in as a bit of a test and learn?
So when I first started the factory or the production, I I outsourced a lot of the projects to different factories.
Sure. Okay. Yep.
I had like because I was saying there are a few areas in China where they manufacture stuff, and I was like,
Yep.
okay, sometimes I'll outsource. And this is the beginning, when I was helping a
Yep.
few people.
Yep.
So I outsourced the factory to him, and I never felt satisfied. It was fun, so it was okay, but I didn't feel like my service was top of the line. I didn't feel like I have full control over. I say this order needs to be done at this time, and it should be done. It will
Yep.
be done. Like
Yep.
I'm in the hands of other people, and if
Yes.
they have time or they don't have time, so I always felt unsafe. In the beginning, it was
Mm.
fine, but then I decided that okay, I need to be able to control everything that is happening, or as much as I can, at least in the beginning. So I came together with Yang Libin and Yang Yuhua. Um, they're a couple I met in Yiwu back in the day. They did a lot of packaging,
Hmm.
and I met them. We spoke, and we decided that we're gonna try to do board games ourselves. Board games are obviously very different than packaging. Packaging is mostly the printing, um, cutting, gluing, but it's not like card making. There's a lot of like game boards, foldable game boards, token sheets. There's a lot more components in board games than just packaging.
Yeah.
So we embarked on the mission together on okay, let's make this happen. So Yang Yuhua, she was in charge of all the sourcing and all the
Mhm.
purchasing.
Yeah.
Yang Li Bean was in charge of because he's like a super professional printing setup guy. I mean, he is the best I've ever met in my life, and super fast. So he took care of all the printing and scheduling the work,
Hmm.
making sure that the cutting line is precisely where it should be. And the colors are perfect and there's no errors in them. So
Yeah.
he took charge, and I was more introducing customers. So that's how we started, and slowly, especially after Debbie and Craig, we in 2023, in the beginning of 2023, we invested around $200,000
Yeah.
into buying
Wow.
new machinery, moving to
Yeah.
a new facility,
Yeah.
and and that was really except from the system, this
Mm,
was another main point that we fully committed into. Okay, now
yeah,
we like an official. We have now 12 full-time workers working in the assembly line and cutting line, and that's a lot full-time workers. I'm not saying like, oh, we need you to come, you come over. So production
yeah.
is always divided into our main workers, where we who we work on, and they're always in the factory, so they know what's right, what's not right. And then production can be divided. If we have too much and we cannot handle, we call other part-time workers into the
Mm,
factory. So yeah, having 12 full-time workers always in the facility, always working is for us, it's a big achievement, and it's a step where we, both of us or all three of us, we cannot retreat and say, okay, we don't need it anymore. No,
yeah.
now we have a lot of responsibility, not only towards our game creators and publishers, but also towards people that work under us. So yeah, that's more or less a journey of how we
Yeah,
slowly we moved forward into producing. Yeah.
absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing that journey as well, Hersh. I think that for myself, that responsibility, as you say, that responsibility at first to your customers, but then secondly to your people, seems like a really strong driving force for your reliability and your commitment. And then, as you said beforehand, you were outsourcing various aspects of the project, but that didn't sit all that comfortably with you. And that was in some ways how I've interpreted it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The catalyst from going to, this is fun, or this is a side hustle, or one of my many different business ventures, to no, this is what I want to do. And I think probably for me, the lesson there for any creators or maybe fellow manufacturers who might be tuning in as well is that I guess for a lot of us, this is a side hustle for a lot of us. So I guess to use your expression, as much as we're very passionate about our designs and want to have some type of commercial outcome at the end of it, for a lot of us, this is a lot of fun. So you're able to find your catalyst or your reason to ultimately invest a lot of your time, energy, and now capital into making this your full-time gig. I guess that's probably what I'd encourage our audience to pressure test and think about themselves as well. Like if they do want this to become the full-time gig, what's their core motivation for doing so? And then what does the action plan look like? Which collaborators you need to come
You,
across as well to build complementary skill sets?
you know,
And
I
what
see.
sacrifices as well?
Yeah, I see. On my end, at least, I see two types of customers or game publishers. You have the
Yeah,
hobbyists, people
yeah,
that are like, I came up with this idea with my family, especially during COVID. A lot of them came up. So
yeah,
many. It's like, oh, we sat for 2 years at home. We thought about this game idea. We want to make it. Maybe we'll sell. Maybe we'll not sell. And it's a hobby project, something that they love. Whether
yeah,
they sell or they don't sell for them doesn't really matter at all.
yeah,
Many of them will go through the crowdfunding approach where they crowdfund their project. They have 400 backers. They're going to print 500 games, and that's it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is type one of customers. They're very casual. They don't have a business plan. They don't understand the return on investment. They don't understand what good ads mean. How to push them. They don't calculate. And then I have the other side of the customers who are like, so I publish this video. So they make like three, four different videos to advertise their game, right?
yeah,
And then they publish it on Facebook. They're like, huh, this video return on investment, it's called ROAS. This one was only like 2 points. This one was 2.4. Why? Let me check.
yeah,
Let me try again. Maybe I'll change the words. And then they start analyzing every word in every videos they made and which one performed best. And then they start pushing more and putting more and more into those good that produced well. So they really calculated about everything. They have Excel sheets of how much they sold, how much they made, how much they needed to produce. They go about it in a completely different way,
yeah,
and they come back. They print once, they print twice, and it's not only big ones. The beautiful part about it was if you handle yourself as a business from the start, um, it's repetitive. So I've done a game like Fish and Chips, which
yeah.
is a simple game, a simple card game. And his business strategy is only Amazon. He doesn't want to do his own website. I recommended
Mm,
a few times against it. I said, listen, open your own website. The return on investment is slightly better than Amazon. You get
yeah,
your customers. He said, no, Hersh, I only want to improve my ranking in Amazon. So I was like, okay, fine.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah. And he started with 1,000. He's like, okay, I'll start. But he took it very, very seriously.
hmm
Um, and he put a budget aside for ads, and he saw, okay, I've invested this much into ads. This is what I got. I will change a little bit my page. I'll change this. I'll change my ad. I'll change the text. He came back for this year. He printed another 2,000 sets. I mean, I know it's not a lot, but my point is,
Mm.
you don't have to be big in order to
Yeah.
treat this venture as a business.
Yes.
But he did now 2,000 sets. He's creating 4 more new games that he's going to test, and then he's going to sell as a bundle also. So, he in the beginning, he's not the most professional one, but he's learning from what he's done, and he's not giving
Yeah.
up, and he keeps pushing. So it's just a different approach of creating. I'm not saying one is better than the other or anything. I'm just saying every creator needs to comes to terms. Well, I think, yeah, you're right. It's not me as the manufacturer. It's not the creator. I think every person needs to come into terms when his vision becomes reality.
Yes,
When
absolutely.
his dream suddenly, he sees it coming together, and then what do you do with it? So yeah, it's a good point that you're making. I think
Very
game
much so. Yeah.
publishers, yeah, yeah. I don't know
Good.
if we should name anyone, but maybe about you. I don't know, because your game was pretty successful. I don't know if you imagine it being so successful. Did you go
Yeah,
through that journey?
it's a good call. Well, probably my version of scaling was incredibly similar. Like, I purchased that 2,000 copies up front of a version that I designed myself on PowerPoint. So I'm no graphic designer to say the least, right? But I think that going back to your headline of there's no right or wrong answer. Like, are you a hobbyist that you're doing this to sell 500 copies to your friends and family and say, yeah, like I funded a game on Kickstarter and my friends and family had heaps of fun with this? Or are you looking to do it more seriously? And at that point, there's no right or wrong answer. But I love that headline, and how that headline relates back to myself is that you don't have to be big to treat your venture like a business. And I think that, like, the thing then to dive into a bit more is it's a mindset, and then it's the action that springboards off the back of it. So to use my own example, yeah, I kind of always had that headline to begin with. It was interesting. We're kind of reflecting on with the sound game crew. That sound game, I should mention, who, for everybody watching and listening, Hersh is lucky enough to be the manufacturer for them, and they're absolutely
Yeah,
killing it,
very
as you
lucky.
heard on the last episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I'm lucky for a day job that I work in data, I work in sales. So kind of, I always come back to, like, is there an insight as to why this could be a business? Or is it just an outlet on the side that we'll see where this goes and have a bit of fun with it? And I think for myself, the core insight that I've always come back to is my first kind of main series of games, Footy Feud, is it's officially licensed by the AFL. Yes, it's a pretty simple game that's themed around sports, but it's like, does that overlap in the Venn diagram between people who like sports and people who like games? Is that white space that just hasn't been done well? Or is there actually minimal overlap between the two that means that the market size is quite small? And I think that even going back to that first print run of 2,000 copies that I designed a crappy version myself, I think I probably even had enough proof points, to be honest, back then that, the feedback here was really good. Kids think it's heaps of fun. You don't have to really know about Australian football to play the game, but especially with how you score, it's thematically relevant to the game. So if you like footy, it feels like a footy game. But if you don't really like footy or don't know about footy, you can still play it and have fun. Hopefully, it can bring new audiences into the game, into the code. So I think that always got me on the track of, I do want to make a business out of this and see how it goes. And my journey to scaling has been quite systematic. So when I got the AFL on board, I think my first print run was 3,500 copies, and then maybe 5,000 after that, and then that increased to 10,000. And then it's like, okay, well, great, let's introduce a second game into the set. Then let's
But
introduce a third game into the set. So yeah, it has
how
been quite systematic.
how did you get them on board? That's another interesting question, because a lot of people. So I've made another footy game. I think I
Yeah,
told you about it, right?
yeah,
The couple from Perth,
yeah.
and I mean, that's also an amazing game. And they were asking me, so how do we get these big organizations to support us and back us and participate in what we're trying to do? And their idea was introducing their school set, they called it. They like
Mm,
a teacher can buy 6 sets and introduce it to the class. So everybody's playing, and it's also educational. Um, he came from a background of being a sports teacher,
yeah, great.
so he
Yeah,
was like, "Oh, let me get the sports together with like the board game. So they had the solid idea, but they did not manage to close. I mean, because working and collaborating with like the big names out there in the market does for sure help. Um, so how
100%.
did you manage to close a deal with them, so to speak? This is something I'm
Yeah,
very interested in hearing.
absolutely. It's a good call. I think it was a process, 100%. It was a process. I think for myself, I remember, and for anybody who's watching and listening, it was interesting. The gentleman who's now the general manager for Big Bash Australia, he was who I had my first pitch meeting at the AFL with. So it's interesting to see what the high profile role in his career that he has now, and he's the person who helped greenlight Footy Feud. Basically, it's an AFL licensed product. There was interesting a question that he asked for me in that first pitch meeting. That he said, "Oh, like why did you try and make a prototype yourself and commercialize a prototype yourself versus coming to us with the idea straight away?" And my answer back to him was that I wanted to show that it works. I wanted to show that I can even sell, 1,000, 1,200, whatever the number was. I can sell 1,000 of these things that, to be honest, look pretty crappy and look like a high school project. But I wanted to prove that the insight exists, as opposed to kind of come to you with an idea that might sound cool but is unproven. And thankfully, he that answer really resonated with him. And he had two boys who would have been under 10 at the time. I gave him a sample pack. He took them home. He emailed me the next week, so that his boys absolutely loved it. Everything that I spoke about, from the fun, the educational aspect, resonated with his family. So that really helped. And then, sure enough, within a fortnight, I had a meeting with the licensing team thereafter. So I think that it's probably a similar journey to what they've been on, I would say. But I think that it's one thing to have the idea. I think that the insight is always a lot more powerful when you can prove action behind it. And I think that's even why I was keen to dive into your story a bit more as well, mate, because you realise an insight pretty early that this industry is quite fragmented. It's hard to get information. It's hard to provide transparency, which means it's hard to provide good customer service and reliability. Bang, there's an opportunity here, but you need to commit an action in order to yourself gain that trust and gain that reputation of reliability before then other people will have confidence in you. Look, having said that, go good to extend.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I'd say one of my first not my first orders, but yeah, one of my initial orders, Sabotage.
yeah,
He wanted to do 10,000 units, and then he wanted to have 5 millimeter radius for the card cut instead
yeah,
of the standard 3 millimeter radius
yeah,
for the card cuts. A tiny difference, right?
yeah, absolutely.
And in production, the machine operators that was cutting the cards put the 3 millimeter radius. Now I don't know if you
Yeah,
know how fast they work, but they cut roughly 20,000 sheets a day.
yeah,
So
huge.
within like
Yeah,
4 or 5 hours, we finished the whole cutting,
yeah,
and then I show him, and he's like, "Hersh, this is a 3 millimeter. It's on a 5 millimeter cut."
yeah.
And the question is, what do I do? Right?
How does that make you feel as well, knowing that this responsibility, this reliance that your customers have on you is such a big driver behind now this being
Yeah.
your main income source? Like, how did that moment even make you feel as well? Where
It made me
yeah,
to feel terrible. I couldn't. I don't know. Like I was felt ashamed of even because of me. This issue happened. Forget
yeah,
about it. And now I know that on average, in other factories, 4 or 5 out of every 10 projects have issues in them. So
yeah,
now I've learned already that it's more or less standard. Issues happen, shit
yeah,
happens, as they say.
yeah, yeah,
But for me, for the first time where such a big issue happened and it's an expensive issue,
yeah,
me and Yang Li Bin were facing the choice of what we're gonna do,
yeah,
and then we came. Eric, his name is Eric. I was like, you know what? I'll refund you and I'll reprint all the cards again.
yeah,
You know, and it's
yeah,
10,000 sets. It's a lot of money. It will
yeah.
be come out of my own pocket. You know, and Eric was like, you know what? It's not necessary. It's fine. But he
Wow.
really appreciated the fact that I was willing to take responsibility over accountability basically over the issues and over the mistakes that did come up. Um, and I think this is an innate nature that I and Yang Li Bin have naturally. I don't think we need to necessarily push for it, but that was another big business decisions that we needed to make where we take responsibility over issues that happen directly or indirectly because of us,
Yeah.
just to make sure that the end publisher or end customer, in the end of the day, he's happy. And it resonated with a lot of different game creators. In the beginning, I did lose a lot of money over
Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah.
Now I managed to bring everything into the point where, okay, there are no mistakes, or there are very little mistakes, or we catch the mistakes early enough. Now we're working on a game called Long Answer, also an Australian guy.
Yeah, it is too. Yeah,
Um,
with Jet. Yeah.
yeah, how do you know
Yeah.
him?
I met Jet a few weeks ago at a playtesting event.
No way.
Yeah.
So,
Crazy. Yeah.
so he will tell you his cards. He has this very difficult brown color to print and has all
Okay.
four CMYK colors. He doesn't even know what's going on in the back end. But I'm telling,
Yeah.
I'm going to say it over here. So we printed. So every time we go into print, we need to waste around 300 sheets in order to achieve the color
Mm.
requirement that the designer or publisher has.
Yeah.
Just to get that perfect, beautiful color, we need to waste around 300 sheets to adjust the colors. In Jet's case, he's making 1,000 sets. We printed 650 sheets of paper,
Hmm. Yeah.
and we still didn't manage to get the color that he needed, just because his color is so difficult.
Wonderful.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So instead of us, so we cut. I mean, we didn't necessarily lose, but we decided, okay, let's mix the color and do a Pantone color instead. So
Yeah.
a very specific color that we don't need to mix it in the machine. We mix it before manually before we input it into the machine. So the machine just
Yeah.
prints
Okay.
one color by itself. So now we know, okay, you know what? We have this problem. I'm not gonna keep moving. I'm gonna change the way of manufacturing it. We had the same issue also with that sound game because they have the black the blue card, and
Yeah.
the blues they chose is very, very deep, and we
Yeah.
couldn't find full consistency between the cards and the expansion decks. So we identify the problem early enough to know how to solve it before it comes to be. So I don't know why I was saying it, but basically, the accountability to,
Yeah.
even if it
Yeah.
means that I'm not making as much money or I'm losing money because of a specific issues that I did not foresee when I was quoting, we still take accountability for it. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people appreciated that in the end of the day.
Yeah. A
Yeah.
100%. And I think for me, like the big insight that I take out of that, there's probably a few, right? I think one is that learning is part of the journey, but there is a cost of learning. And in your case, you recognised, especially with the recent example with Jets game, like really hard to produce that specific colour by getting the combination of colours. So, okay, the workaround for that, we're going to pre-produce that colour, so to speak, and that's the solve. And then that's now a solve that you can apply to other games as well. Or going back to the example with Eric's game, Sabotage, it's just that commitment, right? That again, you're going to absorb that as your cost of learning, but you're comfortable wearing that cost because it protects your reputation, and you know that a big part of what you want your brand to be known by is that transparency, that responsibility, the fact that what you commit to, you will deliver. Because it was really that
Yeah.
insight in a nutshell that you thought far out. Like it's actually really difficult to promise to outsource this idea of board game design and end up with a final product that you can really comfortably commit to up front. So I think that again, for anybody listening in, knowing what got you into it, trying achieving that, even when there is a cost involved, see it as a cost of learning. See it as a way that you're building that learning curve because ultimately it's your brand at stake and your reputation at stake, and learning
Exactly. I think
improves
for game
things at the
creators
same
as well.
time. Yeah,
For game creators as well, because sometimes they want their perfect product immediately as they launch, but they
yeah,
don't get it per se. You know, you do a version, the first version, second version, third version. On your fifth version, your game is perfect. So now I'm making
absolutely.
a trivia game, and has like 800 cards and a
Yeah,
lot of text, and it's in Icelandic. So it's
yeah.
for the
Wow.
Iceland
Okay.
market. So
Cool.
I don't understand a word of what the cards say. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I can't read it, but
yeah,
there's so much text, and the game publisher, he went over it over and over and over and over again for the past month and a half. He's like, oh, I found another issue, let me change. Oh, I found another issue, I want to change.
yeah,
um but then in the end, his friends were like telling him, listen, we Christmas is near, the season is coming close, you will find a lot of mistakes later on, but that's
Yeah.
fine. Then you launch the second version or the third
Yeah.
version, and you learn as you improve. Slowly, as you publish more, as you sell more, you learn and you do and you provide a better product or a better service.
Yeah.
Slowly as time goes by. That sound game as well. In the beginning, we started with a cardboard insert,
Yeah.
and we were in production, and Nat wasn't didn't love it too much, and I myself also, as I was doing the assembly line, I'm like, the assembly line, something isn't working,
Yeah.
something gets stuck, and I was like, you know what, I got to replace this cardboard insert. So then I was like, I started developing a plastic insert for it.
Yeah.
So the first people that got the game in V1 and V2, maybe they have their corrugated cardboard insert, but then V3 already has a plastic insert,
Yeah.
and it just looks a lot better. Not to mention the colors in the game just is 10 times better.
Yeah.
Not 10 times, but a lot more
A,
accurate.
a
So
multiplier of, who knows, maybe the original versions with the cardboard insert will be a collector's item when it sold more than 1 million copies in the world and people had access to the first version and proof that it was the first version as well. Um, that's fantastic, man. I think probably before we might move on to like the next thread, I'm probably even really keen to understand, right, as well, just how you went about even just going all the way back to that first project, right? You said that it needed really strong magnets in the game, so a really highly customized bit of tech, right? Like it's not just printing, it's not just packaging before. And I think that for a lot of game designers, right, like we have this vision, but sometimes taking that first step can be really hard, and we have no idea where to start. So it feels like you jump straight in the deep end, like needing to procure something and make something that's highly customized. Walk us through part of your thought process or journey there that I'm sure there'll be something there that creators will be able to resonate with.
yeah, I was terrified from Debbie's and Craig's project. It was a big project. It was 3,000 sets. Each of the
Yeah,
game is not cheap because of the components.
yeah,
I was terrified. I was very, very scared. The magnets were a very difficult part, just because the magnet is very intangible. So when you deal with cardboard, you can say, okay, this cardboard is hard, it's soft, I can bend it, I cannot bend it, I can cut it, I can't. It
yeah,
frails in the edge, it doesn't frail. I mean, most people don't see this, but when I'm looking at cardboard, I know what it is. It takes me 2 seconds, and I know this is a good one or a shitty one.
yeah,
Um, but when it comes to magnets, it was very scary because they needed a very, very powerful magnet,
yeah,
and the magnetic current or whatever it is measured like with this device that I don't have.
yeah, yeah.
And even the magnetic factories that makes it cannot guarantee that it will be across all magnets the same.
Mm,
Um, so I couldn't buy magnets off the street,
yeah,
and I couldn't walk into a wholesale shop and buy magnet sheets. I
yeah,
had to find the actual factories that makes them. And then Yang Bin and me, we actually went to the magnet factory. We checked all the different magnets. We tested. So he gave us like 5 or 6 different magnets that he made before, and we were testing them. It's good. It's not good. Um, and in the end, we came up with our own criteria of what we need for our magnets.
fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think working with them, and then it was very scary for us because now we're giving him $10,000. Who knows if he's going to deliver the magnets that
mm,
we actually needed or not?
yeah,
Um, but thank God he delivered magnets that were good enough.
yeah,
Um, I can't because it's so intangible. I cannot say for sure. Like I can measure the hardness of a paper or of cardboard. I
yeah,
cannot necessarily measure the current of the magnet, especially when it goes against other magnets.
yeah,
Um, but the first step we needed to do was learn about magnetic force and the type of magnets. So you have diametrical magnet, and then you have a regular magnet. So regular magnet will be top and bottom. Diametrical will be every centimeter of the magnet has both north and south in it.
yeah,
So there were a lot of stuff that we needed to learn and we needed to check and find out before we we um, we committed to Debbie and Craig for their project. Uh, Funny enough, now we have a similar project where somebody wants to make a very beautiful journal. It's a game called Let's Get Real, Bro, and it's all about like helping men talk through their problems. Um,
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like psychology in a second.
yeah,
And he wants to create this journal, and he's very persistent, or his requirements for the UI, for the interface of the user and the materials is very high.
Yeah.
So I just spent 2.5 weeks investigating and learning about different covers and different papers, wood-free paper, that paper that we can use for his game. And I honestly came to the realization that in my place, in my city, I cannot make it. Like I
Yeah.
can, but it's not going
Yeah.
to be. So now I'm searching for other factories that can make this product. Um, but it's a lot of learning. When you accept a new product that is very difficult, it's a lot of learning. And first of all, the game creator needs to understand that it's learning. No matter how
Yes.
experienced the factory is,
Yes. Yeah.
um, there is learning involved. And I think also for any business in that end, except from the fact of taking responsibility for stuff that happened in the beginning and the learning cost, you also need to the learning time basically
100%.
that is long, very long.
It's such a powerful insight there, right, as well. I think that, like, kind of how I summarize, I love the specificity and the detail that you went into there, Hersh, in terms of like the different types of magnets, and that you recognize up front that this is not your area of expertise. So it's okay. How do I build this expertise? I don't have a test, like a kit that can test this. Okay, how do I approach somebody who can test it for me, so I understand the reliability of hopefully what I'm buying? So I think that what you've walked us through is that it's not just here's a problem. Oh crap! I'm going to go off in a million different directions to try and solve it. It's a very methodical. What needs to be true in order to solve this problem, and then there's no doubt you're bigger now than your first project. How can you then create a process that's scalable within that? And you recognise that learning is part of the journey, and there is a cost of learning. But nonetheless, it's very purposeful how you've done it,
Yeah,
and you've set it up in a way that now that part is systematic going forward. So it's not just a whole heap of one-off things here and there. It's you've built some capability, you can
exactly.
build off that. You've now built some more capability, you can build off that. So, yeah, I think,
That's a
yeah,
great thing because once I finished building the order management system, it also records all the different raw materials we've ever used.
yeah,
So once I finished the magnetic project and I had the order management system in place, I was like, okay, now everybody knows. So is this type of glue, is this type of magnet? For the next project, it's going to be 1, 2, 3. So
absolutely,
learning is worth, like if you learn a new skill, it's totally worth it because you can later
100%.
on apply it across everything you do. So so yeah, it was learning I love learning. I learned everything also regarding marketing. Like I had no idea what I was getting into when I first started the business,
Yeah.
and now I'm learning about like accounting stuff, which is so crazy. I
What's
like
yeah, what's your steer in that? Because a similar theme came up with the girls in the last episode as well. Like, what's your steer for when you then feel the need to kind of build this expertise yourself versus then kind of like what's your steer for then when you're comfortable outsourcing? So something like accounting as an example, right? That as you said is a new skill. What's kind of your threshold or your thought process with this is something I need to learn myself versus no, I'm actually going to bring in trusted collaborators because I just don't have the energy and the time to deal with this part of the learning curve.
such a difficult question. So I'll tell you the lazy part, what I'm doing.
Yeah,
So my first attempt is always since all the industries that I worked on, I first like okay, let me find somebody who can do it. I can't do it. Let me find somebody who can do it. And then they do
yeah,
it, and I'm not happy with the results. I'm not happy with the results either because I'm stupid and I don't know anything, or
yeah,
because you didn't do a good job. So then I need to like investigate what's the cause for me not being happy, um, or for
huge.
huge,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
slowly I start to learn, and then I find out that I don't like the guys that I worked with. This was my pattern since the beginning, especially
sure. Yeah,
because whenever I go into so when I first started the business, I also always looked for the cheapest freelancers, so to speak. So I always went. I don't want to name any countries, but I looked
yeah,
for the cheapest ones.
yeah,
Um, and I was never really satisfied. And then I started learning. Had to learn for myself. What is the criteria for me to be happy? What am I actually want? What do I actually want to get from the projects? And
yeah,
if those people are the right ones to bring me over the threshold. So I had to learn basic stuff. Like
yeah,
I even had to learn what I can do and cannot do. Let's take design for example. So when I first started Hero Time, I did all the design for the website, for the resources, all by myself. I thought
Yeah.
they look amazing. I taught
Yeah.
myself Photoshop. I taught myself Adobe Illustrator. I was like, oh my God, it's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
And then they were crap, they were shitty. And now on looking back at it, I know, okay, I cannot do design. Like I
Sure.
can see
Yeah.
design, I can understand how it works, but I will get a lot more benefit if I outsource this part to somebody who's much better than I am. So if you look now with the new Hero Time website compared to the old one, it's like 20 times better, like
Yeah.
100 times better. The designers that I have just does the work so well and so much faster than me. So it's totally worth it. But you want to see how much you need to invest into that professional, and then what the return. So this same professional, he says, Hersh, listen, I want to do a series of videos for you. I'm like, okay, or a post like Instagram posts. And then I need to think, okay, you professional will cost me $600 to make 10 posts.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
How much money am I getting from these 10 posts? Not enough. Not enough to
Mm.
justify the
Mm.
investment into it. Maybe in the long run, maybe if I have more capital and more to spend, if I persist with these posts for, let's say, 2 years, then I
Yeah.
can start getting serious return from them. But I always need to like evaluate, but only because I have the knowledge or the minimal knowledge, I know if the return on investment is good enough or not. If I
Yeah.
didn't have the knowledge, if I haven't tried it by myself, I wouldn't have been able to know the return on investment. Another example is like a person. I did my own SEO in the beginning, and I
Mhm.
wrote all the articles by myself. Um, and then I started becoming very, very busy. So I started becoming busy with orders, with like manufacturing, all these other stuff that I'm developing, and SEO and kind of sort of took a side lane.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so what am I supposed to do now? And I hired one person and then a second person, and I knew SEO because I tried it myself. So I
Yeah.
already saw them and I was like, they're not worth the money I'm spending. So the return on what they're doing is not enough. Recently, I found another guy. We just clicked. You know,
Yeah.
he's so efficient. He reads my mind. It just works so smoothly.
Yeah.
It's worth the money I'm investing into it, and I know I'm getting back some money in return. Um,
Yeah. Great.
so for me, that's more or less a cycle. In the beginning, I don't know anything. I try with like people that are not so good. Then I fail. Then I learn myself, and then I find after I have the knowledge, I find the right professional that will give me what I need. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, but yeah, I don't know. It's a vicious cycle. It's been
Yeah.
in every part. So yeah, accounting was also this story. In the beginning, I tried to get an accountant.
Mhm.
Nothing worked. Everything was a mess. And then I was like, you know what? I'll take a course in accounting. So I sat for 3, 4 days. I learned everything there is to know in the books about
Yeah.
accounting. I was like, huh, I cannot do it by myself.
Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
me find somebody who can help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think at least there, and that's a very specific way of how you determine whether to build up your own capability or your business's capability versus outsource. I think for me, so everybody will have their own different approach of understanding where their threshold is. I think for me, kind of the core nugget to take out of it is that you like to build up enough expertise so that then you can qualify what is good quality and what's not good quality. And I think that that's probably the lesson for myself with both my own game design projects, but then as well for anybody watching in, we're not going to be masters of everything. We can't be jack of all trades, and not every aspect of end-to-end value chain and support functions gives us energy to committing to this pursuit in the first time. But at least get enough knowledge and enough expertise that you can hold other people to account. Because if you can't do that, you're just going to be taken advantage of, and the end product is going to suffer for it,
Yeah.
which ultimately is why we are devoting our time and our energy to.
I think marketing is Achilles heel of most game developers and publishers.
Yeah,
Marketing is the most difficult thing for them. Um, it's the scariest part of all. Also,
yeah, yeah,
it's very, very scary. So for me to go to a convention, for example, I'm
yeah,
terrified because I'm talking. It's me talking to a person.
yeah,
You know, if he says forget about it, he dissed me. You know,
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah,
so marketing where is exactly where you put yourself out there in front of people and they evaluate you, is it worth it or not? So
yeah,
I feel like marketing is one of those places where you really want to take a
yeah,
professional that can look at it objectively, and just be persistent with what he's doing. um, and then you don't feel the heat, you don't feel the, I mean, you need to know what he's doing. So you
yeah,
need to see how he's evaluating the ads. You need to investigate if the ads actually resemble the message that you want to put out, right?
yeah,
But he's the one interacting with the people, so
yeah,
you don't get burnt from. At least for me, I have I like to please people. I don't like, I'm not a disagreeable person. I try to be very very agreeable.
yeah,
So for me, when I get rejection, it hurts a lot.
yeah,
So I would say, yeah, I would say marketing is one of those areas where you want to outsource it maybe to somebody else.
yeah, sure. Yeah. And I think that makes sense, right? Because fundamentally, marketing is all about creating a hook for your target consumer or your target shopper. And when you're so attached to a project that a lot of us see, it's our own creations, our own babies in some ways, right? It can be really difficult to objectively communicate why your game is fun or why somebody should pay money for it or what the key features and benefits are because just everything is good and it's our own creation and it's the best thing since
Yeah.
sliced bread. So I think that yeah, there's a really powerful tip there in terms of yeah, what functions to outsource. I might ask you one more question, mate, because we're sitting about 50 minutes, which is fantastic, and time has absolutely flown before. I might hand it over to you and see if you've got another question for me. You've already asked me one about my own game journey so far, but I'll see if you have another one. I think that you get to see a lot of different types of games. You talked about New Zealand examples, Australian examples, American examples, Icelandic examples. Is there kind of any like two or three trends that you just kind of see from because you see so many different types of games and so many different types of games creators pitching their ideas to you? Yeah, I know there's a broad spectrum of different games that are out there, but if you could maybe at the risk of oversimplifying, say, you know, this trend is hot, or you found that these three or four things are really key for setting a game up for success versus, you know, some of those more one and done type projects. Yeah, I'd be really keen for your thoughts on what some of those are.
That's so there are two types of games, I'd say.
Yeah,
And this is again, this tip I'm going to say is not necessarily for the hobby or for the hobbyists that love their creation. Yeah, if you're a hobbyist and you love your creation and you just want people to enjoy it, and you're going on crowdfunding, like, I mean, I I cannot respect that more, right? But so the tip I'm, so if you're a hobbyist, obviously your game, like Go RPG for Chris, you met him as well.
yeah,
Like his vision is, I just want to provide the best product possible to my backers. So that's what he's
yeah,
for. He
yeah,
doesn't care. I made money. I didn't make money. I sold a lot. He's like, I want every backer to be happy.
yeah.
So I respect that so much, and it's a very very good approach. And then we have other approach if you look at it as a business side, right? And then you really need to evaluate the return on your investment. And personally, so I worked with this French
Mhm.
wholesaler.
Yeah,
They have 300 shops in France. They come
yeah,
to me all the time and they say, Hersh, do you have any new games for us? You know what their criteria is? The criteria is a box needs to be bigger than 20 on 20 centimeters,
yeah.
and the game needs to
I'm writing
cost.
that one down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I need the box to be bigger than 20 on 20 and
yeah.
cheaper than $1.6.
Okay, yeah.
This is the criteria.
American
So
dollars, Australian dollars,
American
euros.
dollars, American
Okay,
dollars.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and this is what they want. You know,
Interesting.
um, because they need shelf presence. They want a game that's shelf present, and they want to maximize their profit. So their margins between what they make the game and what they sell,
Very similar to this,
exactly,
right? Exactly the same reason why.
exactly the same
Shelf
thing.
presence. Yeah,
Shelf presence, but you cannot have the game empty either. So you need to
correct.
have like these big pieces. So they will have like a very big plastic piece that just We made the box so big because we need to fit the plastic piece. What to
Yeah,
do, you know? If you just
absolutely.
put like 5 cards in the box, there's no purpose either.
And there's no value for
So
money, and the consumer gets annoyed, and it's going to sell one copy,
exactly,
get horrible reviews, and you'll end up chucking out a lot of stock.
exactly. So you
Yeah,
really want to balance the size versus the price as much as possible.
yeah,
And because a box is big, you can charge more money for it.
correct. Yeah,
You know, so
yeah,
um, thinking about it now, I need to, Trivia Pursuit.
yeah, yeah,
That sells for like $50, right? But then Cards Against
correct.
Humanity sells for 25. What's the difference? Both of them have 800 cards.
Mm.
I
It's
never
a
thought
real,
about it this way. It's a good
yeah,
question, though.
it's a really good point, right? I know that there's a fellow local game designer. He's designing his first game at the moment. Quite extensively play tested, but I'd say he's probably finessing his design and his merchandising and how it's going to come through. And he's a physics teacher by trade, so
Yeah.
I provided a similar kind of bit of feedback to him that think about where you want your game to sell and then what it's going to take for that game to stand out on the shelf. And the unfortunate reality is, right, is like even do I have a copy here? Like you kind of compare the difference between this, my own game, and that, right? Like, thankfully, this at least has the hang cell mechanic, but
Yeah.
it's just going to get lost on shelf, especially when you have a look at it side on as well, right? Like, if games are merchandised like that, at least here you can actually still kind of see it. It has a bit of presence.
But not only this, but how much money do you need to spend in order to sell one footy game?
Yeah, well, that's
$5,
a good point as well,
$6?
right? Yeah,
How
yeah,
much money do you need to spend in order to get one customer to buy the Marvel game? $11, $12? So for a $6 difference,
yeah,
you're making $25 extra or $30 extra on your sale. So the biggest or the best business advice that I can give in that end is make sure the basket value that people are checking out with is very, very high, or is as high as it can be. This
yeah,
way, the amount of money you spent on ads, you're getting in return. And so you maybe also want to have multiple SKUs, right? So instead of selling only one SKU, you have 5 or 6 different SKUs. So they can choose this product, and that product. This way, the effort because you put the same amount of effort. The
absolutely.
amount of effort you put doesn't change. The amount of
Yeah,
money you're investing into marketing, into your ads, into this stays exactly the same. The only difference is that people are now paying $20 extra.
absolutely. Yeah.
So that's where the biggest tip that I can give. I mean, you don't have to do it immediately, right? The first time you
Mhm.
publish your games, just the first run, 1,000, 2,000, is just to really learn the market. You
Yeah,
just test it out. You have one SKU. People bought it. People didn't buy it. They liked it. They didn't. Whatever. You learn the market. But on your next sprint run, you should come out with 4 or 5 different SKUs, whatever they are. They can even be the silliest, smallest ones. You can
yeah,
even sell them for like $5.
yeah,
People buy this and get shipping for free. People
yeah,
will love it.
yeah,
But you at
absolutely.
least you increase the purchase value of
Um,
every game creator, of every customer.
yeah,
Um, Second thing is you gotta get emails. I know
yeah,
email marketing is so dead, I feel, but getting the customer's details is worth, because you wholesale in the supermarket. You have
yeah.
no idea who bought your game and who didn't, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So when you come out with your next version, how can you sell it directly to the customer?
Mm, it's a great call. Yeah,
So
it's a
what
wonderful call. Yeah, and then
so
you're
what
building a channel diversity through your revenue streams as well, right? So then you're not just reliant on one avenue, but then I've got a whole different area that can operate basically independently
so what
of
would
the
have
other.
happened if you would have put in each game one small little sheet and says, maybe I shouldn't say it because it's a good secret, so don't publish this. But like Exploding Kittens does.
Yeah,
Exploding Kittens like go to our website and get a free gift.
yeah,
Suddenly, everybody that bought your game in the supermarket, you would have had 50,000 people on your email list. And when you come up
true.
with your next product, your cost for marketing is zero because you just blast an email. 10% of them will convert. So you
True.
got 5,000 off the bat.
Yeah.
So that's another. If you sell through Amazon, it doesn't happen. Amazon
Mm,
doesn't. Amazon is doesn't give you really the emails. So same in your situation as well, where you sell
Yeah.
through warehousing, but through supermarkets. But yeah, the main idea is to get committed customers to your product,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
And as you say, I build that basket size, right? And I think, as you say, like build that SKU count. So SKU for everybody watching, listening, stock keeping unit. It's another game. It's a more technical version for a game, basically. So I think that, yeah, 100%, like the way of scaling to build that basket size. If you only have one SKU or one game on your website, then you're quite limited to what that basket value will be, unless somebody's buying it for a gift. And then who knows, potentially they might want to buy 2, 3, 4 copies of it. But the best way how to build that basket size is to have different games, as Hersh has mentioned.
Yeah.
So fantastic little nugget there, mate, on the marketing front. Before we finish up, because I think we've just ticked over an hour, which has been fantastic. As I said, time has absolutely flown, as these interviews tend to do. Have you got another question for me at all, or a question for the community that you'd like me to ask my next guest, or both?
Yeah, my question would be, I mean, in your game, I think it's pretty obvious, but like you were saying, I make a game for Iceland. I make a game
Yeah,
for Australian guy.
yeah,
Why not go international, global immediately? Like, if maybe if because I don't understand global marketing versus
hmm,
very specific target marketing. Maybe I do know a little bit, but the way I see it, if your board game is good or your card game is good, it will be good anywhere.
yeah,
Like, what's the difference between the Australian, unless your theme is like footy, is
yeah.
specifically for Australians, so maybe people in the UK or in the US will not get it. But what restricts board games from going global immediately?
Mm,
And I mean, like, what was? I would ask you why you did not continue with other games. You can do basketball, you can do ping pong, you can do a billion other sports. So why not go into those different fields and different markets altogether? And then also ask other Australian game creators, why do they always only focus on? Oh, I want to start with Australia first.
yeah,
Like, where
yeah.
does that come from? And I don't understand like what's stopping them from moving global immediately.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, right? And I think that for myself, on deep reflection, it's been probably something that's been very self-limiting from my own standpoint. I think that I've always seen this venture. I'm really lucky that I've got, yeah, a stable, reasonably successful, objectively, I think, like job that gives me a lot of satisfaction, financial security, etc., etc. I've always seen this venture as my way of getting a bit of risk seeking activity. It's a bit of a dabble on the side. So I still think, to use your expression before, I'm not in the hobbyist phase. Like for me, it is a legitimate commercial venture, but this is my risk seeking activity. So I think even the fact that I've committed to this, I've seen that as a big enough risk in itself without then even thinking about how do I stretch that magnitude even further. I think what you've opened my eyes with, and what that sound game crew opened my eyes with as well, is that um, my risk averse nature has probably even come through the side hustle subconsciously and without me knowing about it. Again, like I've had my American football prototype fully developed since 2016. Like the rules really haven't changed at all. It's been pretty extensively play tested with a pretty diverse audience. Long story short, I haven't known the way how to go about it. Like I've had my vision, but I haven't known what my first step has been, and I found it really difficult to think about what that first step is. So much so that it's paralyzed me from action, as opposed to Hersh, your example before, right? Like your first project, they want high-powered magnets. You have no idea where to source high-powered magnets, how to measure what high-powered magnets are,
Mhm.
but you put an action plan together. It's like, well, okay, great. What has to be true in order to get this going? And I think that for myself now, through having met Nat and Cam, through having met yourself, I now have more clarity on what that first step looks like for getting into America. So I think that, like, my self reflection is, again, it all comes down to what's that first step. I have had that vision. I just haven't known. I've been paralyzed by that first step, right? But again, I think for all of us, yeah, the size of prize is infinitely bigger. It just is, overseas. What it takes to win, the effort needed, the action plan, probably is a magnitude on what has to go right for Australia. I think that the effort reward curve probably is a bit exponential.
Yeah.
I don't think it's perfectly linear, which is like, well, if it's exponential, then why would you commit the extra time to then get the exponential benefit? I still think that learning curve up front, where you probably isn't quite as linear as, hey, I'm going to launch a game in Australia with my family and friends. I've got existing relationships maybe with local distributors, some retailers I can get some quick wins with. We probably see that short-term kick and then think, okay, great, I just want to get that short-term kick happening. That we ignore the longer burn that might feel really difficult and icky upfront. But I go back to my earlier thing. If the insight exists as to why it's fun, you think you're truly tapping into white space and uniqueness, then you just have to back yourself that that curve's going to happen. So that's what I'm starting to do now, which is good.
Yeah, I would love to hear also like journeys of people that did Amazon successfully or started launching, because Amazon is I don't necessarily think it's the best option, but it's the easiest option for sure.
Yeah,
You just
sure.
ship your games to Amazon and you
Yeah.
do your Amazon listing and it sells, it doesn't sell. You do ads through Amazon. So everything is very standardized and I wouldn't say, everything is very structured well on Amazon. So if there's anyone with any experience in Amazon,
Yeah, great. Absolutely.
that knows how to manage that page very, very, very well, and how to maximize like the investment or the first initial steps, that will be an amazing insight to have. Aside, obviously, from the website, selling on your website and selling on Amazon is two separate fields completely. But I think both of them, like selling on your website, should also not be so difficult, because now where you have like all the 3PL solutions all over the US and everywhere, it shouldn't be so difficult, right? But I don't know marketing too well to say, okay, step one, this, step two, that.
Yeah.
But I think it will be a very, 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 very beneficial to have somebody professional like talk about it and how to penetrate. It's not even a new market, because it's the same people, but they're just in a different location.
Absolutely.
So when I was doing them, I'm sorry, I'm gonna do one more minute. But
Absolutely.
when I was doing my marketing, my thesis for my master's degree, I was arguing, and it's not only me, the thesis we just copy from. We don't copy the thesis, but we extract
Don't tell your
information.
academics that. Don't tell your academics that.
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy. I'm not copying, but I'm referencing to a lot of other researchers that came up with these similar ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole concept is like born global company. They have a term called born global, and basically is the second the company starts, it's already global, right? So it doesn't have the borders of a specific country.
I love that.
Their borders are circles of interest
in their mind, right?
In their minds, yeah. So anyone who is interested in what I have to offer is in my country, so to speak. It's in the same group of people that I can target. They're not, you're in the US, you're in Canada, sorry. It's not like Coca-Cola that needs to build its own operation in a different country completely. It's you just, you sell online, you do everything online, instantly you can become global. But the question is what is stopping it, and or how to actually do it.
Yeah.
Because that's a tough question. This is something I don't know how to answer. And I would love, if you know anyone who can do this stuff, I would love to connect with them.
Absolutely. I'll make that my mission, Hersh, for sure. I'll make that my mission. But I think to recap again, like, thanks for being one, my first global guest, and secondly, my first guest on the supply side of the equation versus the demand side of the equation. Again, heaps of insights and nuggets that I picked up, potentially in order from top to bottom. First one, understanding what that insight is that then sparks action. But then secondly, it has to spark action. It isn't just enough to say, I found an opportunity here. Something has to flick in your mindset to then drive that action and to be bold and make that first step. And I think in many ways there's parallels to that behind Australian designers just going local, right? Like, you have to be bold to make that first step in order to put yourself out there and ultimately see where it can lead. I think secondly, after that, it's knowing the difference between what your game is. Is it a hobby type game where your motivations are less commercial, or are you hell-bent on making this a commercial venture? And you mentioned how in the latter example, there's a lot of micro analysis and analytics you can dive into to understand return on ad spend, which is ROAS, or how to optimize your overall economics to drive more profitability. How do you scale efficiently? I think that it's just knowing that, like, which bucket do you fit into? There's no right or wrong answer. Everybody's motivations for making a game are very different. But if you are committing to the latter, that you're also committing to the discipline that goes with it, not just the creativity that goes with it, because
So true.
you have to build the discipline and you have to build the business in conjunction with the game, which was a really key focus of our discussion last time with Matt and Cam. I think thirdly, after that, appreciate that there is a cost of learning and that you're going to learn a lot. But in a lot of cases, the benefit of learning will outweigh that cost, even if that cost seems a bit overwhelming up front. And the example that you mentioned about the 3mm versus 5mm, having the courage to own, I'm going to wear this cost because I want to be known as being a reliable supplier who can have a point of difference through reliability and quality. And I'm actually breaching what I want to be known for if I don't do this. That's a courageous call, but it was actually through making that courageous call that Eric was really kind and said, don't worry about it. I appreciate it was an honest mistake. Just don't make it again and learn from it, right? So I think that was really strong. And then to kind of take that thread to the next level, your take is have a base level of expertise with everything that you dabble with. Yes, not everything is going to give the same reward, energy, payback as what our absolute wheelhouse is, but at least know enough about stuff so you can hold a conversation. And we touched on areas such as marketing, such as accounting, such as understanding about magnets. We do have to bring trusted collaborators into this business, but if we don't demonstrate enough commitment to learn a little bit about those peripheral functions or those peripheral interests, then that's a risk, and just be comfortable on what the risk reward trade-off is there. And then I think the last probably two big ones is understand your drivers of value. You will ultimately want to get that customer to commit to as large a basket size as you can. You mentioned the 20 by 20 example. So again, think about how you're going to maximize that value, but still provide value for money. It's not just price. You can't charge $50 for something that has one card and is an empty box, right? So the customer still has to feel like they're getting really good value out of it and that's warranted. But try and challenge yourself as to how do you drive that price up authentically so that somebody still feel like they're getting really good value for. And then the last big one, born global. I love that. Born global, and that goes back to your earlier quote that you don't have to be big to treat yourself as a business.
Right.
So I know there's a lot more gold in there as well, Hersh, that no doubt our audience will take it away, but they're some of the big ones that certainly resonated with me and that I'll be certainly keeping top of mind when I get back into the side hustle after this and tomorrow evening after work as well.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy the process and the whole journey of it.
Absolutely. Any extra closing comments from yourself at all, mate, before I wrap up?
No, I just got to say you're an amazing interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you did an amazing job.
Thanks, mate.
Born natural.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind. Well, I'm 9 episodes in now, so it'll be interesting. Hopefully, when I get to, don't know if I'll quite have the capacity to do 1 million interviews, but maybe, who knows, maybe 100 we'll be able to look back at some of these first 10 and see how my style evolved, and also in the spirit of learning what I've learned along the journey as well. But for everybody who's listened either on our podcast or watched on YouTube, again, thank you for your support. In the spirit of Born Global, again, really want to add value to the global community through this interview series. So any feedback, comments, further questions, things you'd like to see more of, things you'd like to see less of, please don't hesitate to reach out and provide that feedback. Don't forget to hit subscribe on the way out as well, and look forward to seeing you next time.